Hello, everyone. Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Welcome to our show tonight, Sisters of Wellness. Our goal here at Sisters of Wellness is to do as it says in the scripture in Titus. Older women teaching the young women. And tonight, I am so thrilled to have one of the cast members from a really informative and fun production that's taking place via Zoom on the 28th here in, it's going to be on YouTube, but it's voices from grandmothers of this community. And I guarantee you, you don't have to be from Gainesville to hear some stories that you will resonate with. Some rich history from the perspective of grandmothers of Gainesville. And my guest tonight, one of my guests tonight is Minister Sabrina Phillips. Minister Phillips, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are playing the part of Cora Robertson. Now, are you from Gainesville?
Originally, I'm from Chiefland, and that's Cora Roberson. It's pronounced Roberson.
Okay.
Yes.
Excuse me for that.
Yeah, that's okay. And I moved to Gainesville back in the late 70s. So I'm originally from Chiefland, Florida, big city, two traffic lights.
Two traffic lights. Did you have any affiliation with Cora?
Well, actually, my parents did. In later years, two of her granddaughters, they were twins, and they wanted me to be their godmother. And then when I got to know them, I found out that Mrs. Roberson was their grandmother. And Mrs. Roberson was actually, along with her husband, were friends of my parents, Reverend John H. Phillips and Mother Ida Bell Phillips. My father was pastoring Emmanuel Baptist Church on Northeast 8th Avenue here in Gainesville. And they were good friends. And I remember going to eat dinner at their home as my mother and father would pastor. And normally some people will host the pastor in their homes to provide dinner for them. So my father has eaten dinner there. And I accompanied them on a few occasions. And I remember Mrs. Roberson from that respect, a very prim and proper woman, the epitome of my mother. My mother was the same way.
Mr. Phillips, when you were asked to participate in this program, and by the way, it is going to be available on Zoom. The premiere is the 28th at 4 o'clock on Zoom for all of you who are interested. This is a program that is part of Women's History Month that was scheduled last year for the Women's History 2020 observance, and it was going to be performed live at the Cotton Club.
Yes.
But now we're pivoting, as many of us have had to do. I'm actually a part of this with you, and really excited to be a part of the cast of talented ladies. When you were asked to be a part of this, what were your thoughts on bringing to life Miss Cora?
I immediately thought, these are some big shoes to fill. And I was thoroughly honored. And I was wondering which character I would choose, because I was given the script and was told to, pick a character. And I was like, I know Mrs. Roberson, so I think I'll try her. But as I began to get into studying the script and everything, I actually today I was overcome with emotion, because I was depicting the part of a very powerful woman, shoes that was very difficult to fill. And for me to do that part, it was really kind of difficult, but I had to really think about her character and all that she did and the contributions that she made to this community. And just think on those terms, and not think in the terms that I'm not good enough to do this part. But I gave it my best, and I am thoroughly honored, and I'm still overcome with emotions. I mean, I took a break on my lunch hour, and I just was moved to tears. And I was like, what an awesome woman you were, Mrs. Robertson. It was as if I was having a conversation with her. And I was like, I was so proud to be able to do your part. And I told her how much I loved her. And she reminded me so much of my mother. And I'm just honored to have been able to play her part.
Minister Sabrina Phillips is part of the cast of about 8 women who are depicting grandmothers of Gainesville. These women played a variety of, in particularly the African American women who held the community get together in many tough times, just as we continue to do today. And you talked about your character, Miss Cora Roberson, being much like your mother. Those women of today, what do you think, or you may have even heard them say, how things ought to be and what we ought to be, we as African American women?
Yes. Well, first of all, I looked at her strengths, and she was a very proud woman, very proud of her background and upbringing. And so was my mother, one who really stood her ground. So did my mother. Um, one who was stood up for the rights of our people, especially the young people in our neighborhood, because we too went through a lot of uh, racial issues in my hometown. And my mother was that backbone for us. And she was like pretty much in the shadows, but she groomed us and schooled us and encouraged us to know that we were somebody, and we would be all that we wanted to be, no matter what it is that we did not possess as far as material things. She was big on education, and that Mrs. Roberson was. My mother encouraged us. I had no choice. I had to be involved in the arts. I had to get an education. I had to go to college. I had to graduate. I mean, all of those things, not so much as to please my mom, but to make it in life, because there were so many obstacles that we were faced against, and we were going through segregation and then integration of issues. Our school burned down that I grew up in and came up in, and we went through so much, but they encouraged us. And the same thing that my mother did, I see all of those attributes in Mrs. Roberson through the script. And every time I would look at her pictures, I just think about my mother. And
So tell me about,
those are the things
because
that.
these
Mhm.
voices of these grandmothers, this takes us back to those days when you had all of the other things that life brought you, and then you were Black.
Yes,
And the fact that the place where you were to go and get an education was burned down. Will you tell us about that?
most definitely. I remember distinctly. I can't remember the exact year, but I do remember that I was in sixth grade, and my next grade would be seventh. And during the time, my sister and some of my two of my sisters and my brothers, they had already gone to Chiefland High School, and I was still at Chiefland Junior High School. I love that school. And one day we got a call early in the morning. It was very cold. I'll never forget. And it was saying that our school is on fire. Um, the fire department was called, and then after the fire department was called, I remember my parents just putting everybody in the car, and we went over to the school, and we were standing around embracing one another and crying, watching our school just burn to ashes. And the fire department never The fire department never came, and I can recall. I'm sorry. I can recall my
I completely
emotional
understand.
time.
Yes, yes, Mr. Sabrina Phillips sharing with us a very, very emotional story regarding your school being burned down. And Minister Phillips, there was a white lady near my hometown in Jackson, Tennessee. The racism was so and is it is such a insidious emotion that
Yes,
people
it
don't
is.
even realize how damaging it is. She said her grandfather built a school. She was white. Her
Wow.
grandfather built a school, and after integration, they burn it down to make sure no black children went there.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah,
So
but okay, I
go
think
ahead.
I've gained my composure now. And after all of that, then eventually we had to all the children that they were all African Americans at that school. We were to be bused to to the high school. And I remember my first day in class, we were in homeroom. The rooms were so crowded. It was so many children in the room until there was nowhere to put anybody. And I remember having my first fight. I didn't want to fight, but the young lady was trying to get by me, and the tables were so close together. So she came and pushed the back of my head, and I was afraid. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home. I wanted to go to my school. And so I got up and I swung and I grabbed her and just threw her on the ground and on the floor in the room. And I remember the teacher at the time, he realized what we were going through, and I could see the pain that he felt, that the pain that we were all experiencing. Everybody was experiencing pain, and he didn't do anything. He just separated us and tried to calm us down. Nobody got in trouble, but it was such a terrible time, and I eventually was put on a, a group called it was like a biracial committee. That was the name of the committee because I was so angry and bitter, and I had to do something with those mean and negative emotions. So I had a sister, and I give her so much credit, and her name is Reverend Diane Phillips Ash. She encouraged me to get into to group get into clubs and get up, asked to apply to be officers, and I did, and I was different presidents of groups and everything, and it changed my way of looking at things and dealing with the negative emotions. So it turned into positive. So I had people to help me to deal with that anger. And this is the first time talking about the school and burning down, and I'm breaking down. I guess I've had those emotions all boxed on the inside. I've never expressed those emotions before like that.
Minister Sabrina Phillips is part of the cast of a play that will be on YouTube the 28th of this month, observing Women's History Month. It's voices, grandmother's voices, and Sabrina is sharing with us the story of her childhood, the connection that she has with Cora Robertson, the woman that she plays in this wonderful display of history from a grandmother's perspective. When you, having gone through that, also there was somebody in the play, and I'm not sure if it was you or the character that talked about how it may have been Miss Vivian Fowler's character that talked about how sad it was and how detrimental it was to close down Lincoln High School. When we look at integration and how it systematically closed or changed the name of African American high schools in every community, as if to say, if you want to be part of us, then we're gonna erase you off the map. How do you think? that we have not fully healed or even addressed. I mean, you came to tears talking about your school being burned down. Do you think
Yeah.
African Americans have not had an opportunity to even heal from the devastation of integration?
To be honest, I don't think so. And a lot of times, as far as I see, and I know if I can speak for myself, that a lot of times I've masked the pain. And a lot of people, a lot of the African Americans probably around here in Gainesville may be still masking the pain. And then sometimes I look at some of the violence that goes on, especially towards other races, and then even among themselves, and the fighting and the gun violence and everything. Sometimes I just wonder. Um, well, it seems to me that maybe they haven't really come to grips with what's happened, and maybe they've not faced it yet. And like I said, this is my first time, and this production has really dug deep and really opened up a lot of wounds. I mean, I could start to tell you some stories. You probably can do a show with me by myself later, but I could tell you some stories, even in my family, of things that happen, regarding racism and everything. But I don't think that a lot of them have come to grips with it.
Well, have not had the opportunity. It's almost as if just as the Negro had to deal with the atrocity of slavery, and there's never
Yes.
been any counseling, uh,
Mm.
putting people out to try to fend for themselves, and then a whole system turns against them, called Jim
Yeah.
Crow, that
Mm.
there's been never an opportunity for the African American to heal from the trauma of domestic violence of the United States of America.
I concur with that because that's so true. And I can remember years ago when Lincoln was open, my dad and when my brother used to come visit during the summers from the military, he would get a carload of young people from my hometown, and we would come over and we would go swim in the pool. And that was a highlight of the summer, go to Lincoln and get in the pool and be with all the other brothers and African American brothers and sisters, and we would have so much fun. And but and then after a while, I heard they shut it down, and then I remember them closing the pool down and putting all the dirt and everything in it. And every time I would pass by, I was like, I don't understand. Why did they do this? I mean, this is where our livelihood, where we had fun. We expressed ourselves. And why would you want to come take that away from us? We didn't have much, but why you want to take that away? And we came all the way from Chiefland to get in the pool. Why would you take that away from us? And I guess, I don't know. I'm hurting right now. And
I
I
and
feel that
and
pain.
Oh, absolutely. I was in the 3rd grade when schools were integrated and went through that traumatic experience of going back to the school where I
Yes.
attended, where we didn't have doors on the bathroom. The heating system was very poor. The water
Yes.
fountain worked occasionally, and when it did, the water was rusty. And then I came back to
Yes.
school after they redistrict everybody and white kids were in the school, and they had renovated the
Yes.
school. And the
Wow.
message to me was I was not good enough for this. And,
Wow.
the message that all of this sent to African American children, and I know those who fought for it felt like they were doing the right thing. But as Carter G. Woodson said, had we
Yes.
understood that we were going to put so many Black principals and so many Black teachers out of jobs, then we would have rethought, or at least in the plans had something in place that would have protected that. So I'm living that with you. And I just
Yes.
don't think we've had an opportunity to talk enough about that. Um, Minister Sabrina, I'm so thrilled that we have joining us is a walking piece of history, a living
Yes.
documentary. Miss Vivian Fowler, she is 83 years young and looking
Wow.
fantastic. She is one of the founding members that helped to bring back the Cotton Club here in
Oh,
Gainesville,
yes.
a place where so many artists had an opportunity to come through Gainesville and perform. Miss Vivian Fowler, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Ms. Fowler, you've been sitting backstage hearing some of what Sabrina had to say. But before we talk about that, this play that we're all a part of, Grandmother's Voices, it
Mhm.
is in collaboration with the group celebrating women's history, as
Mhm.
well as the Cotton Club. Why did you
Mhm.
think it was important to bring those voices back to life?
Well, because those were the voices that I grew up with. That was the era I grew up in. That is when teachers and parents all had one interest, and that interest was making sure my child gets a better opportunity than I had. We are talking about the times when I walked past white schools to get to a black school. We're talking pre-pool period. We're talking about going in the country to the streams in the country to get in the water because there was no pool. So it's very important, though, that not only the people my age remember, but bring it to mind to pass on to the young people, because I think our young people are they are infected with a need to know. They are ready to go. They are wanting to know, and they need to work from a basis of facts. I am so tied up in facts that they will read something that's not factual because we didn't write it and go on as if it's the truth. But it takes those plays like this where these four mothers are just telling the truth, and our young people can pick it up and go with it because they're working from a sense of facts. We can't rely on textbooks because we weren't written into the textbooks. So this is our way. And I'm so happy to be working with the Celebrate Women 2020 group from last year. We want to make sure that everyone knows that these are oral histories from the Samuel Proctor Oral History Project at the University of Florida. So these women sat and told their stories, and we're just putting them back into life.
Ms. Bithian, something you said, we
Mhm.
were not written into the history books.
Right.
So many contributions of African American women. I had a conversation last week with Dr. Rick Stevenson regarding the women of the civil rights movement. You hear about all the men, but you
Hmm.
don't hear how the women contributed. That would be
Hmm.
women like you, women like some of the women that we're portraying. Um,
Hmm.
how do we how do we accelerate that? Because it's been too long.
Hmm. Well, we continue to do this kind of thing, but we write more. We expand the horizons that we have available to us to reach our young girls. And we use whatever system we're in to go back to the bottom part of the system. I always say it does not matter where you are in the school system and the political system, wherever you are, whatever that system is running on are laws that were not created by us. So whoever is functioning there is functioning with a system that wrote us out. So if we teach the children, the girls especially, how important our work has been all the time, ever since Bible time. But as we grow in our expansive modes, as you are, you in your role and what you're doing, I think it's very, very wonderful. But also see, what Miss Phillips does, and I see all of these women who are current and working. We need to have one huge, humongous work fair, work day, whatever, to bring the girls in to see all the places the women in Gainesville are functioning and
And
talk to them about how we got there. We can do that.
so, how do you think us not telling our stories, us not being a part of the history books, how do you think that has influenced what we see today with our young women, even on college campuses? I mean, we work hard to get them through high school and to get them to college, where back in the day, women were conducting themselves as ladies, dressing like ladies. How, and the fact that we've been quiet or
Yeah.
maybe not
Well,
noisy enough.
well, yes, and we're talking 2 or 3 generations that we didn't teach that ladies behave in a certain way. And I don't mean they can't be women. We can be strong women, but we can have pride. We can respect what we say. We can demand respect by the way we conduct ourselves. And it's not a put down to us. I appreciate the fact that I was raised as a lady, and I'm proud to be a woman. Strong Black women are the basis for whatever you look at. I don't care what position you're in, what profession you're in. Strong Black women were back there somewhere pushing and prodding and staying in the background and doing all that. We need to be in the foreground now. And there are no small jobs that women do. Anything that we do is important, because without it, the nation wouldn't exist. So I think we need to have more sessions where young people sit around the room and listen to what the old folks say. And I don't mean old folks as old as I am. You know, if we have somebody who is speaking their language and still have some age and some things to say, let me put it this way, and none of this head shaking and wringing your neck kind of business. I do the portrait that I do, and I turn it into stories, because those are the women that were sweet and kind and firm, but they told me, baby, you can do it. And this is how you do it. And that's what I want to portray. And that's what I want young Black women to know, that it's been hard. But what's the poem said? You don't set out on the steps because you think it's kind of hard, because I still going and I still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So
Mm. Oh, Miss
it's has
Vivian.
tags in it. Yes, yes, bold's torn up with no rug on the floor, but I
Mm.
still going. I still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So they need to know, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. I've seen my mother come through things that no one could ever dream. She was a strong woman. All her 5 daughters talk about that now. A strong Black woman raised us to be strong Black women. So,
And Miss
and you know what? I want Black women to be proud of being Black women. None of this trying to be anything else. God already made you perfect. So I don't think there's any need to try to emulate anybody else but who you are.
Miss Vivian Fowler, part of the cast for this production that's going to be on YouTube on the 28th of this month, Voices from Grandmothers. Um, Miss Minister Phillips, your thoughts on how how we need to move forward as Black women, as African American women, and Miss Vivian, when you said whatever has happened in this country, the
Mm-hmm.
truth be told, whatever has
Mm-hmm.
happened in most countries. I was
Mm-hmm.
watching a show yesterday, and they were talking about the African influence on food
Mm-hmm.
in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, our director for this, Carol Velasquez Richardson,
Mm-hmm.
Cuban native, um,
Mm-hmm.
and she couldn't be with us tonight, but Carol has
Mm-hmm.
done a phenomenal job in
Yeah.
bringing us all together to make this happen. Um,
Yeah.
Minister Phillips, what do you think, or how do you think we can grab our girls, grab our children, and bring them back to us? Because, see, I believe that the past legislation, other can happen. They integrated the schools, but they made sure they didn't teach our children. Thus, we have a school honoring the first African American principal in Gainesville, and it's loaded with kids that they say they can't educate. Aquin Jones High School, which I think is a mockery to his memory, to fill it up with kids that you say can't teach. However, before schools were integrated, everybody was learning in the same space, and kids were learning, and we were being taught. How do we bring this all back to us?
Well,
Minister Phillips?
honestly, like Mrs. Fowler was saying, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Like Mrs. Fowler was saying, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. We can still hear you. Your picture is
Okay.
frozen, but we can still hear you.
Oh,
Miss Vivian,
okay.
while she's getting her
My reception.
camera, yes. Would you like to address that?
Well, the thing of it is, there is no unteachable children. There are unprepared teachers for the children. So, you know, we talk about that some. I was in a classroom where the teacher took the good readers and sat them over with a reader who had problems. She took the good math person and buddied them with the person who's having trouble in math, and that's how we spent our day. We did not look down on anybody, but we just patiently, and she patiently, and she would stay. And one of those teachers is mentioned in the play, but she was my teacher as well. And so what we have to do though is start this business at home. Because if we send a child to school that thinks that their word goes over the teacher's word, we are sending a different kind of child to school. And we know they have obstacles when they get there. Let's prepare them to be listeners and respectful. And if things come up that's out of their range, to bring it home to be handled by their parents. And so oftentimes, what I found when I walked into a schoolroom to do my stories, I'd find a kid sitting at the teacher's knee, and I knew that kid was in trouble. So I'd make sure that I ended my presentation giving some love to that child. So we've got to give the love, but it's got to be firm love, and it has to be complete. And we have to realize where we're sending them. We're sending them into a world where people may not know them very well. So we have to prepare them.
Miss Vivian Fowler, one of the founders of the Cotton Club Museum here, that was a
The
club.
founder.
The founder.
The founder.
The founder of the Cotton Club Museum, 83 years young, sharp, still running circles around some other people who are her junior. Ms. Fowler, talk about this Women's History Project and why you thought it was important to get involved with it.
All right. Well, of course, at the museum, Cotton Club Museum, we want to always be involved in history. And certainly Women's History Month is a time for us to not only look at women beyond Alachua County and Florida and into the nation and back to Mother Africa even, but it's important that children have role models right here among them, among the group they're in. They need to know that the reason they're where they are now is because their parents were taught by somebody. We had a businesswoman, Sarah McKnight, who started the Cotton Club Museum, a businesswoman. There's a woman in the story that ran for election as a commissioner. They need to see these places as places they can go. So it is important for us, to always be on the cutting edge. We have to anticipate what our children need to know and then find ways of introducing. We may not be the greatest teacher for what they need to know at that point, but we can find another sister or another environment that they might be able to learn in. So,
Minister Phillips has rejoined us. Turn your audio down a little bit. We're getting some feedback.
mm-hmm.
Can you turn your audio down a little bit, Minister? Ms. Fowler.
Hey, is that better?
That is better. That is better. Ms. Fowler, Minister Phillips is portraying the role of Cora Roberson.
Mm-hmm.
Florence is the lady that I'm portraying. You knew several of these women.
Yes.
As you're listening to their stories, what are you thinking? What are you thinking about as you're listening to some of these stories?
I'm thinking, thank you, Lord, for putting these people in my life. I watched Miss Florence walk briskly over to Elijah General and up and down the halls. Mabel Dorset that I'm portraying was my high school teacher, and she also took me on rounds with her when she left school and went into the extension service. We talked about Marie Daniels. She was my fourth, fifth, and sixth grade teacher. So these people are my foundation. They are the reason. I always said I want to do what Miss Dorsey does because she was involved in civic organization. She spoke at churches. I mean, she was just, and she was my greatest supporter because she'd always say, "You can do that, you can do that," and she put me on program no matter what. So all of these women were strong. They were strong, and they were out there spending their own little dollars, making sure we had the things that we needed in class. And you saw them at church and at school and in the grocery store. So you had to be on your P's and Q's. Now we got in trouble. I mean, how can you grow up without getting in trouble? But we didn't get in bad trouble, and certainly no trouble around them at all. So I look at where we are today, and I owe a lot to those women.
Oral history, grandmothers of
Mhm.
Gainesville, they are brought to life on stage via YouTube on the 28th of March. And people can find out more about it by going to the Cotton Club's website.
It's
Miss Vivian?
cottonclubmuseum.com/events. Be sure to put the S on, and that will take you right to the sign up page so that you can be notified and get the email to watch the show. But go to the teaser now because you'll get some information there.
And I wish I had that link so that I could show it.
Yes,
The women, the women who are being portrayed, they're African American women. There's a Jewish woman. There are two or three white women who also talk about the things that happened to them during that period of time. The Jewish character who wanted to join the women's club and had some difficulty because they had not been allowing. Well, they had one Jewish woman in. Um, how important is it to have all of those voices, the Black women and the white women of that day?
I'm going to tell you, were you asking me that question?
Yes,
That's a
yes.
loaded question because so I don't always give well, let me just say what I'm going to say. It was important to have all those voices heard because they all impacted Black life as far as I'm concerned, but they all had a woman's story to tell. But here is a caveat that I take away: 5 Black women, 3 white women. One was Jewish. But when I was growing up, it did not matter that she was Jewish because when I worked as a maid in high school, the Jewish lady put me in the back seat and her dog in the front seat, just like the other white women did. So during that period of time, we didn't say, I work for a Jewish lady or a white lady or a Caucasian. We just worked for a white lady because they all treated us the same. Now, I know that Jewish and African American women and men have worked together through a lot of things. And I have to give credit to all of those people who have done that. But when the rubber hits the road, you have to be sure which story you're telling and where you want to go when you tell it, because there are pros and cons that lead you in certain directions. And I'm having this conversation in many places now as to where do we stand? Well, where I stand is firmly anchored in the fact that I am professing a need for Black history to not be an event. The Civil Rights Movement is an event. The Emancipation Proclamation was an event. Black history was life. It belonged on the first page of the history book, and it needs to go all the way from kindergarten through all of the major professions. And that's not what we're doing. We learn events. Think about it. Think about it.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Our producer, Carol Velasquez Richardson, has put the link there for those who are watching and would like to go to the link to see the promo about this upcoming show, bringing to life the voices of grandmothers of Gainesville. And, you know, Mrs. Fowler, when we think about even what just took place with the Asian community, with the shooting in Atlanta, what I thought about was it if it's so separate, if the Asian community was locked arms with Black Lives Matter and
Yeah,
every other minority group in this country that
yeah.
has been persecuted, ostracized because of
Mhm,
color, skin, nationality,
mhm.
how
Gen-
powerful that would
mhm.
be, rather than it seems as if once people get here to this country, if they can not associate with the African American, with the Negro, I want to be here and get all the benefits, but let me not associate with them
My
because
niece,
I don't want you
yeah.
to get confused. I'm not one of them.
Hmm. My
Go ahead.
niece teaches speak. Well, she's a speech therapist in a school down South Florida, and she had 3 or 4 kids in that she was going to have therapy with. The little guy from India, his parents came from India, came in. These are like 9 and 10 year olds. She sent him to sit in a chair, and he told her his parents told him not to sit next to no niggers.
Hmm.
So that's the caveat, and I feel bad when anyone is discriminated against. But when all of us, black, brown, and yellow, when we're all in the same pot, we all need to support each other, which is your premise. And so we find that people who came long after we suffered chattel slavery are getting discriminated against. So they need to join in with us because we know the real story. And I think the stronger the bond would be in trying to get rid of some of the awful things that are happening.
Oh, absolutely. Unity in standing up
Hmm.
against darkness.
Hmm.
When light comes,
Hmm.
darkness
Hmm.
has to disappear. And the more people
Hmm.
who are shining the light, the faster darkness will have to
Hmm.
disappear.
Hmm.
Minister Phillips, as you know, we're all very, very thrilled and excited to be able to be the saucer under the cup of Miss Vivian Fowler. When as you talk and think about your
Yes.
character, Miss Cora, what is it that people will be able to glean from her time period? What does Miss Cora
Well, I'm
bring to her
hoping that
character?
they will be able to. Well, actually, Miss Cora, her character to me brought strength, um, dignity, and the ability to know that you are somebody, no matter who you are, and that just because people are on welfare or whatever does not dictate the fact that we are this type person or that type person. That doesn't matter. We are somebody, and we are a viable part of the community. And she brought a lot of power in everything that she possibly could to help make us who we are today, and who those young people and everybody else was in that community back then. So that's what I saw out of all of that.
And Miss Mabel, Miss Vivian, what will people be
Oh
able to
yeah.
glean from your
Okay. Well,
character of Mabel?
I shared with her son that I'm playing his mother's role because I remember when he was born. Mabel and I, Miss Dorothy and I, worked on the civil rights, Gainful Winfrey Equal Rights. We were on the same committee. I chaired the healthcare committee. She was a member of that. She was the first pregnant Black woman to go in the front door of an obstetrician. We decided, because that was our job, to integrate the doctor's offices and the hospital. She and I decided that we would be the first two. My doctor was on 4th Avenue, old Dr. Henry. He had a little black back office. Her obstetrician was Dr. Dale. He had a little back office. And our committee decided that on our next visit, we were walking in the front door. And that's how we did it. And she was strong. She was not very tall. She had a gorgeous voice. She was an excellent teacher. She did everything that I wanted my life to look like. And I just hung on to her every word. But she wanted, like her mother wanted the best schooling for her children. She wanted the best schooling for every child she touched at Lincoln High School. and even beyond, and even at church, because she became really a very good minister, actually. I don't know if she was ordained, but I know she spoke a lot at Bethel. And so from her, I know that I gained a lot of strength and a lot of insight into how to go about doing things.
You knew some of the other women as well.
Yes, I remember Miss Florence Woods, and of course, remember Miss Cora. She and I, we presented Miss Cora. We being the Rosa Parks Quiet Courage Committee. We presented her with an award for her work and all of the things that she did. She all of them were outstanding. But I knew Miss Dorsey, Miss Robertson, and Miss Woods. And I didn't know Miss Roberts as well, who's also one of the other ones. I met Miss Rudderman from Ruddy's Department Store, and Miss Voyles. I think that family had a appliance store or something. So I didn't know them as well. But there are other names mentioned, and I don't want to give the whole play away here, but there are other names mentioned that I am aware of.
So for people in other parts of the world, because we're global
Mm-hmm.
and across the country,
Mm-hmm.
talk to them about how critical it is to tell these stories and perhaps start gathering women in your own community. Last Monday, my guest was 81-year-old Miss Minnie Bomer in Covington, Tennessee. She was the first Black nurse in Tipton County, and an incredible story. So these stories that we hear that took place in Gainesville and Alachua County are stories that happen in every community across the country. We must tell those stories. What do you
Yes.
say to people about gathering the stories that they can get today with women that are
The,
still alive today?
the time is now. And there is such an easy way to do it now. All you need is a cell phone. The technology has made it such that we can gather these stories. Families get on Zoom now and have family reunions on Zoom. What a great way to record that so that
Yep.
you have that history. But please do not let all of the people my age wither away sitting on someplace hoping that someone will come and talk with them. They are a bed of history. So if you don't know them, I bet you could still brighten their day by just saying, I brought over a bag of oranges, a few bananas, and I wondered if we could just sit and talk a little while, or call up and say, I'd like to take you to lunch. Could we just sit and talk a while? But we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're not going to live a long time, and we are history. We are the civil rights workers. We are the ones who lived in Jim Crow and segregation. And actually, I tell folks we still do, because we have not integrated the United States. We have desegregated some places, but we are not integrated. And that's a big piece of the puzzle that needs to be examined. I know you mentioned the kids at Lincoln and all of that, but the fact is that at Lincoln, we were home. We were at church, we were in a play, we had a concert to come. I remember Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune being our speaker. I remember all of these great things that happened right at Lincoln,
Yeah.
because that's the experience and those are the exposures they wanted us to have. And out of Lincoln, there have been many doctors, nurses, all sorts of achievements. And that's with no book, no back on the books. And that's from a chemistry teacher who didn't have very much. I became a nurse. I had to work hard at it because the chemistry that the kids at the University of Florida and all those things, that escaped me. I had to get it all in college. I didn't have it when I got there. So it's very, very important that our stories are recorded and told. As I said earlier, we're not in the history book. So when I started working to restore the Cotton Club Museum, I every time I'd speak with someone who wasn't African American, they'd say, well, why don't you go to the library, or why don't you go to the newspaper? I said, there's a good reason. because we're not in the library
Yes.
with what I want. And they didn't put us in the newspaper except for a little, well, I remember a little spot about as long as your longest finger called the Colored News. Now, I
Mm.
made it in the Colored News because I managed to go to a party my mother told me not to go to. And I won a pack of notebook paper because I was the best dancer. That wasn't too cool because somebody put it in the newspaper and I got this 25-cent pack of notebook paper and a killing from my mother.
And a
But
$25 whipping.
yes, and a $29 whipping, yes. But but still, that's why we need to record oral histories from our families, because eventually we can thread. That's where we got our Black history from before. The old
Yes.
folks would get together at Thanksgiving and Christmas and they sit around and talk and we'd listen. So we haven't escaped that. But the children don't want to listen now. Take away the cell phones, hide them. I used to take them when they walked in my front door. We had all the big dinners here. I take them and put them on the counter in the living room, and then we'd head in the back to the dinner table.
Good for you.
But we got to do something.
Good for you.
Mhm.
Minister Phillips,
Yes.
how how do you see us doing this? Because I think this is a great start. What my goal here at Sisters of Wellness, and the reason that I started this show is because every second Sunday at Marshall Chapel Church down the little dusty road in Meaden, Tennessee, they had sisters meeting. And they lived
Yes.
that scripture, older women teach the young
Mhm.
women.
Mhm.
And that's my
Yes.
goal with this, for us to sow into uh, young women, women who may not have had anybody else to sow into them, and truly take back our place as leaders in our families and in our communities. Because, ladies, I often say, until we take back our homes, you can forget about taking back the streets. You can march all you want to and say we got to take back our streets.
Yes.
We got to take back our homes first. And we're the
Mhm.
ones to take back our
Yes.
homes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes.
And I like that. I like that analysis because to me that means that we are going to teach what it means to have respect, please and thank you, waiting my turn, delayed gratification,
Yes.
achieving,
Exactly.
being willing to be a part of the family, being willing to contribute, not given everything you want, being taught that it's better to wait for. That's what I hear you saying. And I hope young parents will listen, because children who get everything they want the minute they get it will never learn delayed gratification. And I've got run into that with so many young people because they think now, and
Oh,
they throw
yes.
tantrums and fall out in the store. And I say, if they fell
Yes.
out in the store, that wasn't the first time they fell out. See, they did that home before
That's
they
true.
got to the store. So that's when you stop it at home. You can't stop it in the store. Then you just let them lay there until they get tired of yelling, then you go out. But my thing is, children want directions. They want to know that this is behavior my parent loves. They want to know I please my parent. But if you never let them have that opportunity, they will never know how to please their parents and please and have a good life.
Minister
Yes.
Phillips?
I, yes. I just listening at everybody. I love listening at wisdom, sitting at the feet of wisdom. And I've done that all my life. And I've learned so much from Mrs. Filer. And I remember telling her a few years ago, she may have forgotten that she's my
Mhm.
inspiration. She was my inspiration then, and she is now. And I've learned so much from her. And like she said, like, to contribute to all the things that we've learned from the production and all, the reading and the taping of it and all, is that you take what we can. And back in the day, we didn't have the monies to send everybody to charm school. I remember, I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember about charm school, Mrs. Vivian
Mhm.
Filer. Um,
Mhm.
but my mother scraped up enough money to send one of my older sisters to charm school so she could
Mhm.
learn social graces.
Mhm.
When she learned social graces, she would come back home and teach us those social graces. And I remember walking with an apple on my head and learning how to sit properly in my seat. And when I go out to eat, we pretended we were out at dinner, and how we would put our food in a well, we didn't call it a doggy bag, but a bag to take it home with us. And then also while we were sitting there, how to actually eat properly. So it's enough to teach everybody about the things that they need to learn to make themselves better in society. And then I heard Mrs. Filer talk about the self gratification. I call them the spoiled ones. You give them everything that they ask for, and then in the end, they end up being a disgrace to the family and to the community and everything. But this production has taught me that we don't have to bring our kids up in this day and time. I don't have kids, but I have godchildren and god grandchildren and god great grandchildren. And I would love to teach them about the wisdom that I learned so that they can be better individuals and learn how to embrace that the ancestors have taught us, because it's so important. And that's the piece that I feel that's missing in a lot of families today. They don't talk about this oral history. They don't have this oral history in their families. And it's so vitally important. And I remember we did a lot of videotaping. And I have a cousin in Detroit, Michigan. I think she has everything from every family reunion that we will have had in our family. And she's got photos from way back when. And then I have a cousin in New York the same way. And we could just get together and look at those videos and look at those pictures. And pictures are worth 1,000 words. And this is an amazing journey for me. And thank you, Mrs. Filer.
Yes, yes. This
Thank you
play,
both.
Grand Voices, that you'll be able to view it on YouTube, March the 28th. The premiere is at 4 o'clock on March the 28th. To get more information on it, you can go to the Cotton Club /events. Is that the right address?
Cottonclub.com/events.
cottonclub.com/events. And our producer, Carol Velasquez Richardson, has put the link, the YouTube link, so that you will be able to see it. Carol, thank you for the work that you have done on this production, as well as many other productions that you have been involved with in this community. And we look forward to your schedule allowing you to be a guest on Sisters of Wellness. Ladies, I really, really enjoyed having you all as guests tonight. As Sabrina, as you said, you could be a guest by yourself. Miss Vivian, you could be a guest by yourself. And we need to do that. Because
Thank you so much for having me.
And as pointed out, it is so easy for us to do today. All you need is a cell phone. So for those of you who are watching, if you have any questions about this production, or even how you can do something like this, similar to this in your community, these ladies would be glad to share what they know with you. We must tell our stories. There's so many stories to be proud of. And gather up the young women so that they are not at the mercy of a music video on what it looks like to be an African American woman. One of our viewers, Josette Jenkins Golette, says, "I am Black and I am proud of it." Josette, thank you so much for watching. Josette is in Texas. We appreciate you watching and your support. And Patricia, I don't know where you live. Enjoyed the radio talk show, so informative. She called it radio. That's okay. You heard and you saw. Pat, where do you live? Pat and my sister Sharon were in church together and have been friends for years. Thank you very much for watching. Again, the show is Grandmother's Voices. It is in conjunction with celebrating women's history. This is Women's History Month, and in conjunction with the Cotton Club here in Gainesville. Ladies, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Everybody,
for having me.
absolutely. Thank you all so much for watching. We will be back here Thursday at 7 o'clock for the Timbuktu Report. So we do hope that you will join us for that as well. In the meantime, sow into a young woman's life. She may not listen immediately, but she does hear you. Don't stop talking because you think they're not listening, because they do hear you. Your voice is important. Your experience is important. And we've been called to that. So please gather up your children, gather up, and they're all our children, as Miss Vivian has all of us in her apron, and we appreciate that so much. So until next time, I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a great moment. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.